Evening from the London Palladium tomorrow with the Children's Royal Variety Performance, with something for everyone amongst the host of stars appearing in aid of the NSPCC. There's a chance to see some old friends and to meet some new stars. Magic and musical mayhem from Martin Daniels. And the real thing from Curiosity Killed the Cat. And 5 Star. With extracts from La Fille Malgardée by members of the Royal Ballet. And comedy from Russ Abbott.
God, I love that tune. Good day, the name's Bond, Basildon Bond. I've got letters after my name.
And what Easter gala would be complete without an Easter parade? The Children's Royal Variety Performance, tomorrow at 5 to 6 on BBC One.
In 15 minutes, our pro-celebrity driving competition presented by Mike Smith and Sterling Moss. Now at 5:20, the news on BBC One with Debbie Thrower.
A massacre in Sri Lanka. Over 100 bus passengers are shot dead. Japan's about turn on trade. Cable and wireless could get the deal they want. And President Reagan talks of a historic arms agreement this year. More than 100 people, including women and children, have been massacred in an attack by armed guerrillas in Sri Lanka. The attackers ambushed several buses carrying people home from annual holiday festivities in the coastal district of Trincomalee. The buses were diverted into the jungle. Passengers were then lined up and shot. It's not yet clear who the attackers were, but the government has blamed Tamil groups fighting to establish a homeland for the minority Tamil speakers in the north and east of the island. The authorities say the victims were from the majority Sinhalese community.
The massacre happened at about 3:30 in the afternoon on Good Friday, which is celebrated as a holiday here, even though Christians are only a small minority. According to a military spokesman, 107 people died when a group of armed men opened fire with machine guns as the buses were travelling along a lonely stretch of road about 30 miles from Trincomalee. He said torrential rain was falling at the time, which hampered the movement of troops to the area. When they got to the site of the massacre, their first priority had been to take the injured, numbering about 60, to hospital in nearby towns. The spokesman said this and the bad weather had delayed efforts to pursue the attackers, and there was as yet no clue to their identity. But although Trincomalee is a mixed community district, most of the victims are thought to have been Sinhalese civilians, with a few naval personnel among them. If this report proves correct, then the presumption must be that the attackers were from one of the militant Tamil separatist groups. A Sinhalese left-wing extremist group has also been more active recently, but it has yet to prove capable of mounting such a large-scale operation.
Japan has announced a significant trade concession which could help resolve its dispute with Britain over the cable and wireless affair. It now says it would welcome the involvement of an international company in setting up a major cable link between Japan and the United States. The change in policy has been welcomed by Cable and Wireless, which has been pushing for a stake in the project. But the concession has come on a day when the Americans are imposing trade sanctions on Japan. President Reagan is due to confirm today that a range of Japanese imports will carry a 100% tariff, effectively forcing some products out of the American market. This report from James Robbins.
For a year, Cable and Wireless has been struggling to be allowed into Japan to install high-technology communications equipment and fibre optic cabling as part of an international consortium. Crucial to their plan is the laying of an undersea cable between Japan and the west coast of America to carry huge volumes of electronic data as part of a network eventually designed to encircle the globe. Under pressure, the Japanese government has now announced it will allow the link. Cable and Wireless have welcomed the decision, but they still have some tough negotiating ahead, both to win the license for the consortium and to ensure their own 20% stake, which the Japanese have consistently tried to scale down in favour of Japanese businesses. The Japanese government is now apparently trying to protect its valuable exports by making concessions, particularly exports of electrical goods and microchips. They want to persuade America to lift its punitive tariffs about to be imposed. The Japanese Prime Minister, Mr. Nakasone, is visiting Washington at the end of this month. Next week, his special envoy will be explaining the telecommunications concession and other Japanese relaxations designed to repair some of the damage to international trading relations.
President Reagan says he's optimistic about the chances of reaching an arms control agreement with the Soviet Union this year. His remarks followed a briefing by the Secretary of State, George Shultz, who held talks in Moscow earlier in the week. Mr. Reagan said important progress had been made at those talks.
Mr. Shultz had talked to the Russians. He travelled from Moscow to Brussels to the President's California ranch. And more the emphasis was on persuading the Europeans to accept the Soviet offer. Mr. Reagan himself, as usual, was optimistic.
It's my hope that the process now underway continues to move forward and that Mr. Gorbachev and I can complete an historic agreement on East-West relations at a summit meeting. And in that connection, I will consult personally with our NATO allies on further negotiations and plans.
Mr. Shultz denied that there was disagreement with these allies.
It's fair to say that people are considering an important offer that the Soviets put on the table when I was in Moscow. And you don't just react to things like that, you think them over.
Later, when the microphones were switched off, there was a revealing exchange. Mr. Reagan was asked if he was going to sell the proposals to the Europeans. That's what we're working on, he said. He was asked if he was sure of the direction they wanted to go in. All I heard today, he said, is the direction I want to go. In Europe, Mr. Shultz told the Allies that if the Soviet proposal were accepted, they would have to make some adjustments to their defense. The same applies, of course, at home, in the Pentagon, and the debate's not over yet.
In Argentina, President